Hey, I've been a Mac user for a couple of years now, almost 10 to be precise. I originally started off with a Windows computer, made my way up to the first MacBook Air that was released, moved on finally to the MacBook Pros, and stuck with them. These computers have been pretty great for everything that I've needed. I'd like to welcome you guys back to another episode of Essential Tech. Today, it's time to let go of the Mac. Today, we unbox and check out my brand new computer. I hope you like it. Let's get into it. So I'm using the MacBook Pro 13-inch from 2019. This little guy over here. This computer is fantastic. It's a little beast. It's got 16 gigs of RAM on it, 4 Thunderbolt USB-C ports. It does everything I need it to do. I mean, 90% of what I need it to do. It's a great computer on the overall. But smaller the size does mean that when you put it through heavier workloads, it's going to have more thermal throttling issues. And that's the price you pay with portability. This computer is like the middle child in the whole MacBook lineup. I mean, you have the MacBook Pro 16-inch from 2019 and 2020 now. You have the MacBook Air, and then you have the 13-inch MacBook Pro, which you can put a considerable amount of power into while keeping the size as low as possible. So it's not a bad computer. It's done its part. But that's the thing about computers. Computers change, and they've reduced in size considerably over the last 2 decades. I mean, you had giant desktops, which went down to personal computers, and now you have tiny pieces of glass and metal that fit in your pockets, and they're also computers, and that's fantastic. And that's one of the main reasons why I'm making a change today. Today, we're getting something smaller, more powerful, and way more portable. Today, we're looking at a brand new computer that doesn't have a mouse and doesn't have a keyboard. I shot the unboxing of this about a week ago. I've had it for about a week and I've been testing it out for you guys. I'm also going to give you my review and reasons as to why I'm letting go of this MacBook Pro 13-inch and why I'm changing computers at this point in time. Today, we're looking at the iPad Pro. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the unboxing which I shot about a week ago, and then I'm going to come back on screen and tell you guys exactly why I made the shift from the MacBook Pro to the iPad Pro 2020. Let's get into it. We're going to start off with the most important accessory for the iPad Pro. This is the Apple Pencil. I love how Apple packages their products and has this amazing pull tab at the back. It makes it really easy and makes the unboxing experience extremely nice and very premium. If you look at the Apple Pencil, it comes in a standard tiny box. On the inside you have a bunch of literature that you're probably never ever going to use. You have your Apple stickers and you have the Apple Pencil itself. The Apple Pencil comes wrapped in a piece of plastic, makes it feel a lot more premium. When you look at the Apple Pencil, the entire build quality is amazing and has a lovely matte white color. Now, for the iPad Pro, this is the main event. The iPad Pro also has a plastic covering on the top when you open the box. You can see the camera module at the back along with the LiDAR sensor. Taking it off is always a pleasure. In the inside of the box, you're going to see a bunch of literature, your builds, your documentation, which you're probably never going to use, and my favorite accessory of them all, which is the Apple stickers, which we're going to get to in a bit. You have a USB-C to USB-C port, and you also have your standard 18-watt USB-C adapter, which fortunately they still give in this box. As you can see, I've got the 512GB variant, the 11-inch and Wi-Fi version only, because I'm replacing my computer with this and I don't need data. There you go. Now when you're looking at the iPad Pro, as you can see, it has a beautiful screen. This is a liquid retina display, which is basically LCD in Apple's terminology. I've already set up my iPad Pro. I took a little bit of time off and a little break from the video to do that. And you can see I have all my apps in one location. I have all the important apps that I use on a regular basis down here. I have my photo and video apps out here. And I have my additional Apple apps and stuff that I barely use ever out here. I have my music and I have my social networks right here. I also have a couple of productivity apps right in this location. Overall, the iPad Pro feels like a really good device in your hand. It has a fantastic build quality if you look at it. The screen is fantastic. It has no color shift on the sides. Well, it's an LCD display, so you don't expect it. And with iPadOS 14, you now have widgets on your home screen, which basically will help you launch absolutely any app that you want at any given point in time. It's pretty great. If you look at the iPad Pro's overall design, you can see on the side you have a magnetic strip right here. This is basically to attach the Apple Pencil magnetically. Now if you're looking at this, you see this is the Apple Pencil. The Apple Pencil has a groove on the side, a really flat edged groove. All you gotta do is that, and you can see it's not going anywhere. The Apple Pencil attaches to the iPad Pro and also charges magnetically, which I think is a fantastic feature that Apple has put into the iPad. I see a lot of other companies in their current tablets are trying to implement this, including Microsoft and Samsung. On top you have your lock button, which basically locks the screen. You have 2 speakers on the top, along with 2 speakers right at the bottom. And the iPad Pro was also the first Apple device that Apple has actually used USB-C with, which is pretty amazing. At the back of the iPad, you have your standard iPad look. You have your smart connector at the bottom, the Apple logo, the information about the iPad. Now when you turn the iPad over onto this side, what you're going to basically look at is the camera module, and you'll see this additional little circle below the flashlight. That is the LiDAR sensor. LiDAR is a new feature that Apple's been trying to push really hard this year, and it basically helps with augmented reality and photography on certain fronts. But the thing about LiDAR is, I don't think every consumer is actually going to use it because augmented reality in our world hasn't really caught up yet. Maybe in the near future, but Apple's really using this as a feature to sell this device. According to me, it's really not. Now, I also picked up this case for the iPad Pro just to keep it safe. This is the Zugu Alpha case. You can see it's got minimal branding with just the logo up front. At the back, you have Zugu case written on it. It's a pretty great case on the overall. I mean, it's pretty strong, it's sturdy. And as you can see at the back, you have a slot to put your Apple Pencil into when you don't want to charge it. It also has a slot on the side where you can attach your Apple Pencil, and it lets the Apple Pencil charge magnetically like the iPad and Apple Pencil are supposed to. It has a beautiful cutout for the camera module, and it's perfectly well shaped. On the inside, it's got a nice rubber foam lining which basically protects your device, and that's not the icing on the cake. You also have this amazing magnetic flap at the back. This flap, basically, you flip your iPad over, you turn it around, and as you can see, you have grooves on this. On these grooves, you can just lay down your iPad in any particular order that you want to. I'm going to prop the iPad into the case and show you how it looks. As you can see, I've now propped down the iPad into the Zugu Alpha case. It looks pretty great. It feels really good in the hands as well. The case is really thick, and the iPad is well protected on the overall inside this case. It has perfect cutouts for your speakers, and it also has the USB-C slot on the side. I'm going to put the Apple Pencil in so that you guys can see. Here you go. And when you open up the case, pull it off, plug it in, and there you go. The Apple Pencil is actually charging. Overall, it's a pretty great case. So you can either buy the iPad Pro at an Apple store or the Apple India website. When you go onto the website, it's going to be a little confusing, so let me give you a little bit of a rundown on how this works. The prices start from 71,000 for the 11-inch, and they go up right up to $120,000. It depends on what size you get, which is 11-inch or 12.9-inch, and the storage variants can be between 128 GB and 1 terabyte. Depending upon these factors, the price will be variable. You have two options with respect to the colors, that you have space gray and you have silver. I'm more of a space gray kind of guy myself. You also have two other options. You have Wi-Fi and Wi-Fi plus data. If you're going to use the Wi-Fi plus data version, then it's going to be a lot more expensive. Always remember that the LiDAR scanner animation that they have on Apple's website is fantastic, but it's honestly not a feature that you want to buy this iPad for. There are a bunch of additional accessories available on Apple's website, and these accessories basically include cases, dongles, Magic and Folio keyboards, which are insanely expensive, and the Apple Pencil, which can basically be used as the mouse for your iPad. Now I want to tell you as to why I actually am shifting over from my MacBook Pro to my iPad Pro. I've been in the process of transition for the last 1 week, and I've been loving the entire process. See, as a sailor, I always travel, right? That's primarily what my job is, and I have to carry all my tech with me every time I join a ship, every time I get off a ship, and even having a bunch of tech on the ship is a responsibility. You have to take care of a lot of stuff. So I've been looking at the best portable tech out there so I can actually transition from heavy computers to something smaller. Now, I was looking at even the Microsoft Surface lineup, but honestly, it just didn't do the job for me. And the main reason I finally chose the iPad is because I'm already in the Apple ecosystem. Other than that, the next reason would be Apple Silicon. Apple Silicon has crossed leaps and bounds over the last few years. I mean, we already saw it with the A series chips which are on their iPhones. Now the iPad Pro is basically used the beefed up version of the A12 processor. The 2018 iPad Pro uses the A12X, and the 2020 iPad Pro uses the A12Z. Both these processors are 8-core processors, and the only difference is basically one graphic core, where the A12Z has one graphic core more. These processors basically come equipped with 4 power cores and 4 efficiency cores, which make them perform like a complete beast. Which brings me to the performance of the iPad Pro. I mean, the iPad Pro eats 5K footage that I get from this GoPro 9 that I'm currently shooting on. Basically, when I'm even editing 4K on the MacBook Pro, that system throttles. It really heats up, the fan gets crazy loud and gets extremely slow. And 90% of the time I have drop frames when I'm editing video, as the iPad Pro is smooth as butter and the performance that I get out of it is fantastic. Now this brings me to my next reason for why I'm shifting over to the iPad, and that is iPadOS. Basically, in 2019, Apple split up iOS into 2 parts. iOS for iPhones and iPadOS, which is basically an iPad version of iOS. Now with iPadOS, things have changed. You have hard drive support, you have flash drive support, and you have a number of various apps which I'm going to show you right now. The presence of apps such as Adobe Creative Cloud, Photoshop, Lightroom and various other creative apps is fantastic on the iPad Pro. It only goes to show that various developers have actually adopted iPadOS and given us the professional apps that we actually need to work. Overall, iPadOS gives you the ability also to connect hard drives and SSDs, flash drives, and remotely transfer your footage, transfer your files from one device to another device. Basically, it's like the Finder system on the MacBook. The presence of multitasking in iPadOS is also phenomenal. Having 2 apps open side by side and having a picture-in-picture while watching my favorite media is also amazingly good. The iPad OS overall has given you a lot of flexibility and made the iPad more like a computer. Overall, what I'm trying to tell you is that the iPad can do 90% of what the MacBook Pro can actually do, and can do it better on a lot of fronts. Now, the only 10% that's remaining on the iPad Pro is basically your choice of professional apps. Yeah, there are a lot of developers that have developed special apps for the iPad Pro like Photoshop, but there's also certain apps that haven't transferred over to the iPad Pro even within the Apple ecosystem. I'm talking about Final Cut Pro, I'm also talking about Logic Pro, Xcode, and various other professional apps that are actually required to do certain tasks. Now, is that a deal breaker? No. Maybe in the future, if Final Cut Pro does come to the iPad, we all will transition to that, but if not, there are workarounds for all of these things, and as long as you're okay with them, I mean, like, it comes down to a personal preference. It's a choice of apps. If you're okay with the transition, it's fantastic already. Now, the final question that comes into my head is, who would I recommend the iPad Pro to? I would recommend the iPad Pro to anybody who has an Intel-based MacBook from 2020, 2019 or earlier on, who's looking for a portable and powerful setup that can do everything that their MacBook can do, and probably do a lot of tasks even better. With the new M1 MacBooks coming out, should you really invest in an iPad? That again comes down to a personal preference. If you're okay with iOS-based apps, yes, definitely. The iPad is already well developed. iPadOS is already had its transition. Developers have already started making applications for it, and there's a lot of third-party great apps on iPadOS, and it's a lot cheaper than the first-party apps that you get on Macs. And when you're looking at portability, the iPad is leaps and bounds ahead as compared to anything else in the market. Although, if you need those professional apps, I'd suggest wait for the M1 Max. Don't pick up one right now because Apple is still undergoing the transition. So the transition is going to be a 2-year transition. I'd suggest wait it out. The performance gains are already visible on all these MacBooks, which is fantastic, but the apps aren't optimized yet. Stick to the MacBook that you have. And if you want something more portable than a MacBook, which is already developed, which has already got third-party support, that's where the iPad Pro comes in. The choice is yours. If you guys need any more details, if you have any more questions regarding iPads and how I use the iPad, what editing apps I use, what workarounds I use to make the iPad as good as a MacBook with respect to applications, definitely hit me up in the comments section, and I'll probably make a video on all of those things in the near future. Thank you for watching Essential Tech, and I'm going to see you guys in the next one. Peace.